So I wanted to talk about kids having really bad anxiety these days. Over the last 5 years or so, as a therapist that works primarily with teenagers, especially the last 5 years, I have watched the mental health of kids just absolutely plummet. We were at critical mass a year ago. We were at critical mass before the whole virus situation hit, all the lockdowns and the quarantines hit. Suicide is the number one cause of death for teenagers, way, way, way more than the virus. And with their kids, their anxiety is skyrocketing. I've become very, very troubled and very alarmed to see how many kids are are crippled. They're paralyzed by their anxiety and their fear. It's so alarming and troubling to see that their lives, even before they hit adulthood, is completely shut down, and they are completely paralyzed and crippled by anxiety. And some of the types of anxiety that I'm seeing, they're terrified of kids, other kids or their peers thinking certain things about them. There's no way to know whether anyone's thinking anything about you or not. Usually it's us perceiving that other people are thinking those things about us. Just you have no evidence to back that up, right? They're terrified of being perceived in a certain way. They're terrified of failing. They absolutely terrified to fail. So they don't even try, and which is failing. Not trying, not doing anything is actually failing, right? Um, you know, neglecting to engage in life and taking on positive risks or new ventures or trying new things or developing new skills or new talents, and staying far away from those things because they're afraid of failure is failure. is and the other thing that I see with kids too is that they're terrified of approaching their teachers. If they're failing a class or something, terrified. What if they're upset with me? What if they're angry with me? Well, then they're having a bad day, right? Because they deal with this every single day, okay? And these kids, their social anxiety is crippled. They're just crippling them. And they are more and more kids. It's like, well, I have friends online, and the problem is, right, is that they online friendships, as most of us hopefully know, is not even remotely the same thing. It's not even close to being as positive or rewarding or beneficial to kids. But they can also represent themselves in a way that's completely inauthentic. They can represent themselves as being, hi, my name's Steve, when actually I'm Bill, and I live here, and my parents do this, and I'm this rich, and I do these things, and they can misrepresent themselves because and unfortunately fosters this myth that if these kids online actually knew what they were like, they would totally reject them. Okay, this is really problematic for them. Okay, now with they're just absolutely paralyzed with social anxiety. Problem is that parents are contributing to all of this anxiety. They're really contributing to it. Okay, let's run through it. Number one way that I believe that parents are contributing to it is by removing anything that's difficult or challenging. Okay, and I see parents where it's like, well, he doesn't like that class, or he's struggling in that class, or he gets anxious in that class, so we're just going to take him out of the class. That's not going to make the anxiety go away. That's going to make it worse. Well, he gets anxious when he goes to school, so we're just going to leave him home at school. His anxiety is not going to go away. It's only going to get worse. That will only make the anxiety worse. You're only reinforcing it. You're also reinforcing this idea that you can't because you're anxious. So we're just going to make life easy for you because of how incapable you are, right? So a lot of messages that unfortunately we're reinforcing inadvertently simply because we want to remove discomfort from their lives, okay? Discomfort will help them grow, will help them learn. It will give them positive experiences, okay? That is the number one way that parents are contributing to these kids having social anxiety is they just enable these kids from just like, punching their card and saying, I'm out for good. I'm not doing this life thing. And then parents are too overprotective. Okay, this is number two. They're too overprotective. I talked about this in my last video. Being overprotective is so problematic in so many ways, but it gives the kids the perception, often a false one or a negative perception, that the world is far more unsafe than it is. And that kids believe that there is danger waiting for them when it's not. And the more that we treat life like it's dangerous, and the more that we treat them like we have to protect you, the more it's going to reinforce this fear, these irrational fears that life is just dangerous and they're not capable and they shouldn't leave, they shouldn't do anything because life is just going to chew them up and spit them out because it's just not safe out there. It's not emotionally safe. And physically, the world is actually as safe. Here in the U.S., our society is probably one of the safest that's ever existed in the history of the entire world, right? The known recorded history, this is as safe as it gets, and yet we are extracting our children from it more than ever. Why? Probably just this overblown sense of fear in society. Okay, again, I'm very, very down on social media. I believe that social media is fueling us with fear. It's programming us with fear. The news is programming us with fear. But by being overprotective, you are contributing to your kids' anxiety. So parents are doing these things. This is normalized parenting things, right? Parents are engaging in these behaviors. They're engaging in these normalized parenting, practices, and then they don't know why their kid is stuffing themselves in the closet, clutching their Pikachu doll, and sitting in the dark, and they don't even like, I even talked to a kid that doesn't even want to go get the mail. Well, people might see me getting the mail and think bad things about me. How did we get here? What happened? What is going on? Okay, so this is my approach. Okay, resiliency parenting. I've talked about this many times. Go from worried parenting to resiliency parenting. Adapt and overcome. You're gonna get through it. Okay, worried parents tend to have this attitude that if it's uncomfortable, it's perilous. Get rid of it, And I mean, as an example, last year I worked with a kid who he had a falling out with his friend group, and in the class, he started a new semester at school, and two of these friends that he had a falling out with were in one of his classes, and it was really uncomfortable for him. And his mom asked me directly, should I take him out of the class? No, absolutely not. We all have to work through uncomfortable situations. So I worked with a kid on how to act, how to behave, what choices to make, what to say, what to do. Actually turned out really positive for him. He ended up reconnecting with one of those friends in a really, really positive way a couple months down the road. Because he didn't burn the bridge, he didn't run away with his tail tucked between his legs. This is resiliency. Adapt and overcome. Push through it. Just because it's uncomfortable doesn't mean that it's perilous. And so kids who don't have anxiety, have crippling anxiety, really have a leg up these days. They really do. But we need to turn this around, folks. We really do, because if it keeps getting worse, man, it's just going to have such a critical mass. I see these parents in distress. Why is my child having these problems? And they just don't realize that what has become normalized parenting practices is contributing to the problem. Okay, thanks for watching. I got to get to work. So like, subscribe, share. If you have a viewer question, all that is in the description below. We'll see you in the next one.